And we're live on a Friday on LinkedIn. How awesome is this? Well, happy Friday, everybody, and good morning. It is Friday, the 15th of April. If you haven't done it yet, you have 3 days to file your taxes. So just thought I'd start off with the bad news. File your taxes, please. Otherwise, the federal government is going to be slightly upset at you. But in good news, it is Good Friday. It is also Passover, Seder today, and it is also the middle of Ramadan. So it is a Holy Friday by all extents of the imagination. And so if you're celebrating any of those holidays this weekend, we wish you happy celebrations together with your family and friends and coworkers. My name is Adrian
Absolutely.
Viller. I am head of business development for IBT Online, and I have the tremendous pleasure of being joined today by my colleague, Chris. Chris, good morning.
Hey, Adrian, how's it going? Happy to be here. Just to briefly introduce myself as well, my name is Christopher Chaidez, business development manager based out of Fort Lauderdale here in Florida. So, yeah, very happy to be here. And also, like you said, Adrian, good Friday to everyone.
Awesome, Chris. Today's conversation is going to center around resources that are available for Florida exporters and what Florida companies can do to really either start or boost or grow their international sales, grow their brand, grow their business into whatever target markets that they are pursuing. So, Chris and I have prepared a few questions that have been submitted previously by some of you, but if you have any questions at all during this time, that chat box at the bottom is open. So go ahead and submit your questions, say your hellos, say your goodbyes, say whatever it is that you want to say. We're here to hear it all, and we'll probably be asking you a few questions along the way. So with that, I'll pass it over to Chris.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you, Adrian. And like you said, very happy to have gotten some of these questions as well. Just really concerning questions and aspects of international that we've had many Florida exporters ask us about, including, of course, our relationship with EFI, and of course, we'll touch on that a little bit as well. But to go ahead and start, we can get it kicked off with really a general view of today's environment. With the first question that was submitted being, in today's environment, is exporting as important as it was? And if it is, how are companies pursuing international business in this challenging environment? So, Adrian, I will pass it over to you to answer this. Yeah, after you.
So all the heavy-handed questions to me, right, Chris? Now I see what you're doing. But Chris, that is a great question. And of course, a lot of companies are actually in that mindset right now. Of course, during the height of the pandemic, everyone was just worried about whether they'd be able to keep the doors open, to pay their bills, to take care of their employees. Things have changed since 2020 and since 2021. Some would say we're past the pandemic. Others are a bit more cautious in saying we're not quite there yet, but certainly today's exporters are facing a variety of challenges as the result of so many of the disruptions that the pandemic actually caused and generated. Companies are looking at supply chain shortages. They're looking at shipping and freight costs skyrocketing. They're looking at delays in ports when they're expecting raw materials or some of their final products coming through. And then, of course, there is the issue of the great resignation and finding sort of suitable talent to really help you grow and scale and make those next steps in growing your business. So many exporters today are worried about being able to fulfill client orders and keep their costs under control. However, however, exporting still remains a very smart way to tap into the 94% of the market that is not based in the United States. Yes, the United States is the number one market in the world, both for businesses and for consumers, and it will happily remain so for a while. However, investing into greater opportunities outside of the US to grow your business can give you business resiliency through diversification. And you might ask yourself, well, why is that even important? Well, as lofty as that sounds, many financial institutions today, including recent reports from Bank of America, but also from Allianz in Europe, they're becoming a bit concerned about not just the conflict in Europe, but also inflation, which we all know is happening in key economies. And as a result of of inflation, the Fed, but also other central banks increasing key interest rates. And the concern is, of course, that could issue an economic shock, and it could potentially trigger a small recession both here in the U.S. and in international markets. So while we know that these boom and bust cycles exist everywhere and since the beginning of time, leveraging exports to diversify your revenue streams can certainly create resiliency by not depending on the strength of one single economy. The challenge, though, with everything going on in the world, whether it's war or the pandemic or just rising costs and inflation, is how can you effectively find or be found by new international clients, overcome some of the cultural and linguistic differences to be understood, and then have an effective strategy for engagement and for conversion, and to make those potential leads in those markets your client. So, Chris, in that sense, here's a question for you, submitted also to us earlier. Why do companies need to think about digital as solutions to capture sales and new customers in some of their export markets?
Yeah, absolutely. Adrian, great points as well. One that I really want to touch upon, especially kind of looking at this question, is a number that you mentioned, a statistic that 94% of the market is not based in the United States. So I kind of want to go ahead and lead off with that. So what this says is, of course, there's plenty of opportunity internationally that is able to be found, and one of the best ways to do it is, of course, through these digital solutions, being able to find those new customers and, of course, capture sales as well. So, the thing about it as well is that it's an online world today. What the experts really have told us is that the world has pivoted to digital, and it's only going one way as well. So some of the underlying reasons that I think are important to really focus on. The first one is just the grand amount of internet users. So as I mentioned, and as you mentioned as well, 94% of the market is not based in the United States. But overall, there are over 4.95 billion daily internet users, and they're spending a lot of time online as well. So an average of about 7 hours a day. So whether that be mobile, whether that be on their laptop, they're online and they're able to be found as well. The second one really is that pivot to technology, that pivot to digital. And there's a lot of new digital technologies that are really being used more often now. A great example of that, honestly, is what we're on right now. So LinkedIn Live. This is LinkedIn is a platform that's been around for a while, but as we've been seeing, a lot of these platforms have been implementing new technologies, including lives, including creating events, Zoom, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a rapid expansion, and we've really seen in the last 2 years that's sort of the accelerator. So that's really the third underlying thing as well. Something that we like to call the great accelerant. So over the last 2 years, COVID and a variety of different aspects, of course, affecting the international, affecting all of us. One thing that we've taken away is there's actually a recent article that I was reading from McKinsey that tells us that during COVID, the online world advanced in 2 years what could have taken 10 years. So just the speed of that online uptake, which is evidenced by just the grand expansion of e-commerce. Everyone's on Zoom nowadays as well, Shopify, and really just that overall learning of online and how to best really be able to use it to your advantage to reach those customers. The last one that I want to touch upon is sort of the disruption in business travel. So there has been obviously a very significant sort of disruption in terms of business travel. And Amex actually tells us that U.S. business travel in 2020 was down 71%. So obviously that was at the very peak of sort of all the COVID things and sort of the changes to society at that time. But what they also tell us is that it's not coming back to pre-COVID levels until 2025. So until then, international travel will be, of course, slightly more at a disruption. So really, a lot of customers then turn to online. They turn to online trade shows. They turn to online different ways of doing business. So you are really able to find these buyers and their customers, and of course, they're all online. So I think those are really some of the underlying reasons that we do think that companies need to think about digital solutions. So to kind of base off and jump off that question, Adrian, what are some things that you would recommend companies do in order to shape their strategy to continue to meet these new customers and, of course, continue to stay on top of mind for their prospects as well?
Chris, thank you. That's a phenomenal question. And certainly a lot of companies find themselves in that crux right now of deciding and thinking about what they can do to still stay first and foremost in their clients and their prospects' mind, and how to get in front of them with such a complicated world environment and world context that we have right now, right? And a lot of companies are thinking, which is true, that as some economies reopen, not all, especially if you look at China, you know that some economies are not reopening. Travel is definitely an option, but it still has its challenges, right? Between fewer flight options and staff shortages. I'll just make a parenthesis here to talk about staff shortages in airlines. I recently flew back from Canada, and we landed in Miami. I think it was at 1:30 in the morning. And we waited around for bags for about an hour and a half at 1 in the morning. So now it's 3, and the bags couldn't be offloaded because they essentially had no handlers that were working during that time. They had a shortage of handlers, and they couldn't get our bags off the plane until 5 a.m. when the next shift came in. So that's just a tiny personal example of how those staff shortages at airlines, but also at hotels. For anybody who's traveled recently, you know what hotels look like these days. And it's definitely not how it used to be. But add to that, testing requirements, vaccine requirements, mask policies, which are all over the place. And it really can be a hassle to travel internationally to meet your clients. So it's definitely not how it was pre-pandemic. And as you mentioned from the Amex report, it might not come back to that level of normality for a few years. So what do you do? And in the meantime, you have conflicts like the invasion of Russia and Ukraine, which is further disrupting travel and further disrupting business in Eastern Europe. Remaining in contact with your client base, though, keeping your messaging top of mind can still be achieved even in a restrictive travel environment. Having a great website with resources for your clients. Clients are still wanting to, if they're already your clients, they still want to know more about your product. They still want to know more about what other things your company can do for them. And having a strong social media presence, leveraging channels, yes, like LinkedIn Live, can help you connect with existing clients. It can help you connect with new and future clients, potential partners. And that can keep the engagement going or even start new engagement and elevate the experience for your international clients. And finally, events. We all know that conferences and events are coming back, and I have been part of those in-person events just in the last couple of weeks in Florida. I've been to 2 or 3 summits, and people are very excited to get back to those events. But you also need to understand that a lot of international businesses are not able to travel to conferences in the United States yet. And many people are still uncomfortable with travel. So a lot of these events are being held in a hybrid fashion. And so I do encourage companies to participate in person when it's possible, when it's safe to do so, but also to participate virtually in these events, listen to current industry trends, and to engage with the network of support that is available in the States to help them grow their exports despite the circumstances. Chris, anything you would add to that?
Yeah, no, definitely. And just to touch upon that, talking about sort of the hybrid fashion, it's been interesting. We've been able to attend a couple of in person, and we've also had the grand pleasure, for instance, last week or 2 weeks ago, being able to attend, of course, the NASBIC conference, which was all virtual. So, like you mentioned, there are some coming back in person, but of course, just having that hybrid option and really being able to connect with clients like that is something that we haven't seen before, not as much anyway, especially pre-pandemic. There wasn't the regular conference and then the hybrid and the virtual. It was just one. So it's honestly it's definitely one of those. When we come back to the great accelerant, it's one of those awesome things that we've been able to see and really be able to reach that clientele. But one thing at IBT Online that we do love is HubSpot. Which is a leading tech inbound marketing and sales platform, really great thought leadership, etc. And something to take away that I recently got from kind of looking through, what they consider best practices. One thing is be online, privilege online. be present, be where your prospects are. So, we were talking earlier about just that grand scheme of people that are especially found online. So 4.95 billion, and that's where they are. That's where they're looking for your products. That's where they're looking for your services. So the opposite of interrupting, your prospects and customers with cold calls, emails, many events is just to stay on top of mind, be present, be able to, of course, provide that value, and that's really what it comes down to is being able to provide value. The great thing about online is that you're able to provide that, and it can be something that they can come back to. It's resources that they're able to see, infographics, blogs, video, etc. That is long-standing and something that they are able to come and find and do research and find out more about you. So, and an often cited example is a car. Once upon a time, you had to go to a garage to find a car. You had to do in-person research, and the car salesman had all the knowledge. It was sort of trust what he says, but not really be able to find that value and look into it yourself. But today, of course, anyone can research their car online, all the colors, the specs, and if they go to the garage, they already know what they want. They already have that value. So, I guess just to kind of come back around to that, and like I mentioned, being able to be online, privilege that online presence, it just provides more information, it provides more value, and it makes it easier, of course, to really reach those clients too. But I kind of want to turn it back to specifically Florida-based exporters and some of the great resources that we do have. And I mentioned at the beginning we will touch a little bit upon our relationship with EFI, and of course some of the resources that they do have. And as a small business in Florida, some of these are extremely helpful. Great export grants. So I guess the question that I have to you, Adrian, and really this is for our Florida experts that are curious as well, is how can a Florida-based exporter potentially tap into the resources that Enterprise Florida provides?
Chris, that's a great question. And I would just start off by saying that exporters in the state of Florida are really lucky to have such a great network of support. If you're the business owner, or if you are in a position of leadership at a Florida company and you are looking to start exporting, or you're already exporting, want to grow your exports, and you haven't reached out to some of the organizations that I'm about to mention, you're really doing yourself a disfavor, and you should be engaging with these organizations, because there is a tremendous amount of free, yes, I said free support available for Florida exporters. A lot of expertise available there that you can tap into, which for, small and mid-sized companies, you don't always have all the answers in-house. You don't always have all the resources in-house. And the state of Florida does put quite a bit of resources behind these organizations to really make sure that you can be successful in international markets. I'll start off, of course, with Enterprise Florida. Enterprise Florida is the primary economic development agency in the state. They do two things. They help companies set up shop and bring high-paying jobs to the state of Florida. But they also help established Florida companies grow their international sales with a phenomenal team of international trade managers and directors that are spread out across different regions of the state, but that also have extensive knowledge of key export industries for the state of Florida. If you're in aviation and aerospace, in the marine industry, in the life sciences industry, in clean tech or manufacturing, you ought to get in contact with Enterprise Florida's international trade managers, because they can really be a helping hand in consulting with you and helping you create or perfect or improve or scale your exporting strategy. EFI also has a very strong grants program to support market research, trade show, and trade mission attendance. They were just in Ecuador, I believe, and they took a team of 7 or 8 companies to meet with potential clients in Ecuador, and they had B2B meetings there. They can also facilitate distributor introductions, and they have a grant, yes, for website localization to support your digital export strategy. There's also a second layer to it with the Florida SBDC International Trade Specialists. And the Florida SBDC, if you haven't been in contact with them, They are just a phenomenally resourced and helpful group of knowledgeable business individuals with experts who can really help smaller businesses looking to start exporting with training, resources, and connections to funding. There's also the U.S. Commercial Service, who, at least here in South Florida, their office is not too far away in Port Everglades. They run the Gold Key program, for example, which can leverage the international network of the Foreign Commercial Service to help you find vetted distributors in new markets. And there's also county level organizations like the Miami Beacon Council and the Broward Office of Economic and Small Business Development, who are there to support exporters in their counties thrive and succeed in international markets. And finally, there's supporting organizations like the World Trade Center Miami, the Central Florida International Trade Office, and of course, the district export councils, who are all there to share best practices, experience, and support with exporters of all sizes. And the beauty, Chris, is that in Florida, particularly, these organizations all really work together to help businesses take advantage of the many benefits of exporting in today's economy. So there's no wrong door. You can go to any of these organizations, and they're happy to refer you to the other ones if they can be more helpful. But again, for anybody who is listening and who has not been in contact with any of these organizations, especially Enterprise Florida, if you're not familiar with who your international trade manager is for your specific region or for your specific industry, leave a comment down here and I'll be more than happy to provide an introduction. These are phenomenally knowledgeable, resourced, and expert individuals in the world of exporting can significantly help you with achieving your international growth goals. So, Chris, a question for you just related to that, I suppose. Do you have any exporting success stories in the state of Florida that you could share with us? Perhaps, an example of some Florida companies that have really benefited from the programs, whether it's that are available from Enterprise Florida?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Adrian. And that's really great sort of information in terms of those resources. So of course, we've worked with quite a few Florida companies in order to, of course, leverage their online, growing their export sales, brand, and business, which again really aims towards creating that economic wealth and jobs in Florida. So in specific, I'd like to highlight three sort of clients that we have had in the recent past couple of months, years, who have been able to benefit from the Florida Online Global Programs, and specifically from the relationship with trade organizations that you mentioned, such as EFI. So one that's actually right down the road from us here in Fort Lauderdale is a manufacturing company called Stimson. So what's interesting is they're actually a 150-year-old manufacturer of grommets and washers, as well as candle wicks, which was actually we had the pleasure of being able to actually go and visit their facility and see how it's all made, and of course being able to see how the candle wicks were made was super interesting to me with that goal. But they did have a goal of really growing in Europe specifically. So they did already have a distributor in Germany who they have seen success with, but they really wanted to really be able to acquire more volume distributors within that European market. So what they did, of course, was come to us and kind of look at, setting up that call to action for the UK as well as a German website. So what was really neat about this is that, we delivered these localized websites for Stimson. But then, of course, they also went through our online marketing programs as well in order to drive more traffic and attract new potential distributors as well. So that's really a case that, and it was extremely neat to be able to actually go to the facility as well in person and see that. But that was a case of course, a client that saw success and decided, let's add on to that and add on some online marketing as well. A second one that I want to mention is New England Machinery, which is based actually in Bradenton, Florida, and is a certified women-owned business as well. They are worldwide specialists in packaging equipment, and they were founded a little bit over 45 years ago. So what's neat about their sort of setup as well is that they have thousands of machines worldwide on every continent, So they're very much a global facing company. But what they really wanted to be able to provide and really help their distributors with is the localized websites for the English speaking provinces of Canada and the Mexican market as well. So really focus on USMCA and building up North America as well. So one thing that they really wanted to focus on as well with the calls to action was requesting a quote. So that's sort of their call to action on their website, and really focus on building up their sales export pipeline, finding new leads in Canada and in Mexico as well. And then the third one that I want to briefly mention is Timilan Core, our EnviroCleanse. And they're a Florida company as well, based out of Bonita Springs, Florida. And with their brand EnviroCleanse, it's really focused on creating that healthy, safe environment to breathe clean air in. Very neat. They do this through using minerals from the earth to protect against sort of toxic chemicals and biohazards in the air. But yeah, they had a great focus on sustainability, so that was an aspect that we really wanted to focus on. And they also had us create websites for them in the EU as sort of a general region, so .eu, and more specifically a German website for their German audience as well. So yeah, those are three fantastic case studies, and of course, we do have a very expansive list of customer case studies and example websites as well. So that's sort of the essence of that. I guess just to kind of turn it back for a real brief last question, Adrian, and we'll go ahead and check on the live to see if we have any further questions. But if there are any listeners that wish to know more about Enterprise Florida and the programs, or what or any really of the organizations that we have discussed, what are some of the next steps for them, and what programs do companies typically start with when beginning their exporting journey?
Great question, Chris. And really, I just want to emphasize that there is a no wrong door policy in the state of Florida. So you can start with any of these organizations. You might start at the SBDC if you're a smaller business that's sort of new to exporting and you're still looking to define, which are your primary markets that you want to export to and where your biggest opportunity is. Or you can start with Enterprise Florida and connecting with their international trade managers, which I do highly recommend. And learning about the different grants and opportunities that are available there to go to trade missions, to go to trade shows, to participate in the Gold Key program. They provide a lot of financial support for those, but they also provide great advisory capacities for emerging Florida exporters. And so there is no wrong door policy. Again, if you're not familiar with Enterprise Florida and you don't know your international trade manager for your region or for your industry, or you'd like to connect with the Florida SBDC or the commercial services or World Trade Center Miami or the Central Florida International Trade Office or any of those, please do get in touch with us. You can leave a comment here on LinkedIn and we'll be more than happy to come back to you. Otherwise, we'll drop a couple of links in there in the comments just to guide you and point you in the right initial direction. Of course, if anybody has additional questions about the Florida Online Global Programs, if you're curious and interested and want to learn more about how you can leverage digital tools, particularly websites and particularly international online marketing to grow your export sales brand and business into whatever your top international markets are, whether it's something as remote as China or Thailand or Japan, or maybe it's in Europe, France, or Germany, or even something proximate as the USMCA region, Canada and Mexico. We're more than happy to discuss how digital tools can help you grow into those markets, be supportive of your existing on-the-ground efforts, and really help you win and succeed. And again, be resilient to some of the turbulent forces that may be hitting the economy over the next months and years. And so with that, I think that we would like to say thank you to everybody and wish everybody a wonderful Friday. Again, if you're celebrating a holiday this weekend, we wish you happy celebrations together with your family. If you're not celebrating a holiday this weekend, then just go enjoy because it's going to be beautiful here in the state of Florida as it usually is. So go enjoy being outside. Any last words from you, Chris?
No, like you mentioned, very much looking forward to getting in touch with anyone that has any questions, and I hope you all have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us here today.
Don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn. Chris and I are always happy to engage there. And if you have any other questions, you can always visit our website, ibt.onl. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, everyone.